All right, I believe we are live. Hey, it's Dre Griggs with the City and Wisdom. Today is a great day. This is the first day of our Wealthy Retirement Challenge. Over the next 5 days, I will go over each of the strategies necessary to unlock generational wealth through strategic retirement planning. This is a free challenge, so you will see the streams, and so the streams will be available to you anytime that you want to see them. But if you want the workbooks, if you want to be able to ask me the questions, then you'll want to go into our private Facebook group. You can get access to that. Actually, if you go to our website, obsidianwisdom.com/retirement challenge, that is obsidianwisdom.com/retirement challenge. So I will share my screen with you, and then I can go over what today is going to look like. Perfect. Let me just slide this over so I can see it a little bit better. All right, perfect. So as we mentioned, we'll be unlocking generational wealth through strategic retirement challenge. And the reason we focus on wisdom, the reason that it is so important, if you've ever read scripture, it says to seek wisdom, but why is that? And we will answer that question. You'll find all the benefits and the reasons, and that will be without sacrificing your happiness, quality relationships, or your personal freedom. There is a cost to all things. Actually, my dad was saying that to my one of my daughters over the weekend. He was like, "There's a cost to everything." I actually love when the way Jim Rome talks about it, and Joe Rogan, lots of people. There is a cost, whether paying the cost to learn something, or paying the cost to do something, or paying the cost not to do something. There is always a cost. We just have to decide what value something is and whether it makes sense for us to pay whatever that cost is. And today I will be able to show you. So, fun fact: there are 22 million millionaires in America, and there are over 300 plus million of us here in America. So, I will show you what the top 10% of people in the country do to create themselves that amount of money. And you may be saying, Dre, there's more to life than money. And I would agree with you. There's a lot more to life than money. But at the same time, the benefit of having the money is you're able to do more of what you already want to do, whether that's more trips with your family, whether that's the financial security to be able to afford to pay for kids to go to college or grandkids to do different things, whatever it is that you want to achieve in life, most of the time, it does cost something. And so, even if wealthy doesn't feel good to you, maybe if financial independence or financial freedom, if any of those words makes a little more sense to you, I will tell you personally, for me, the benefit of money is obviously not to have the money. It's the who we have to become to get it. And I will discuss with you my general philosophy on wealth and why I think that is a goal worth achieving. But I'll start with like a little proverb. It's the saying that I often say. And so, a man with wisdom meets a man with money, and the man with the wisdom leaves with the money, and the man with the money leaves with the wisdom. And we'll discuss and we'll unpackage that throughout this challenge. But there's this saying, I'm not exactly sure who to give credit to, but there's this old saying that is, if you took all the money in the world and you gathered it up and then you gave it out to a bunch of people equally, that ultimately the money will end up back in the hands of the people it started with. And I would submit to you that it's understanding what we have to do to achieve that wealth. And that is why you can't just give someone the money. And that's probably one of the more important things, that if you don't take anything away today, that if you just take away the idea that we cannot just leave someone a bag of money, we can't just leave someone a life insurance policy, or we can't leave them an inheritance and believe we create generational wealth, because about 70 to 90% of generational wealth is lost by the third generation, and that there must be something more. And so, whether you talk about lottery winners, where you guys have seen probably 75% of lottery winners end up broke every about 3 years in, professional athletes, about 80% of them within 3 years of retiring, they end up broke. So, there's something else outside of just having the bag of money. And we will talk about that. So over the 5 days, the first day, what we're at now, we'll do the unlimited wealth. I'll go over that with you. Tomorrow is retirement readiness. And the beauty of that is we'll actually create a retirement plan. Each of you will be able to do that. So even if you do nothing with me further, you will literally have a retirement plan that you can take and implement on your own, which is totally fine with me. Step number three, we'll talk about long-term investing, right? So a lot of people are gambling nowadays, but not a lot of people are investing. So we'll talk about long-term investing. And then day number four, we'll talk about wealth transfer. And that's generally estate planning, but we'll talk in great details about how do you set that up. And then day number five, we'll talk about a family dynasty. How do you actually achieve generational wealth? And that's when we'll end the challenge. Of course, I have to let you guys know. So I'm not one of those. I don't even know how to say it, but I'm not one of those like I don't actually know what I'm talking about type of things. But I'm trying to be humble about it. But, anyways, the main idea is I do have to give you a disclaimer. My disclaimer is not the one that's like, I don't know anything about financial planning. And so everything I say, you can't take it seriously. I am actually a financial planner. I've worked for three of the largest financial institutions in my life. I have a bachelor's and master's in economics, and I understand this stuff very well. But with that said, the information I'm giving you is going to be not specifically catered to you. And so as a result, this can't count as us having a financial planning meeting. Even though most of these strategies will work and you'll see the benefit when I go over them, I do need to let you know that, hey, I have not seen your specific situation. It will be like going to a car dealership and the person's like, you'll love this Honda Accord. And you'll be like, well, you don't even know how many people is in my family. You don't know what I'm going to do with the car. Like, but it doesn't matter. The Honda Accord's a great car. It has 5-star safety rating, gets great gas mileage. Right. Like I can't sell you something without knowing things about you. So that's what the disclaimer is. So let's start. I love this example. So we'll give one where we'll talk about the benefits of wisdom. So this is Timothy Kim. I actually came across this article on CNBC, and the headline caught me. It was like he spent $70,000 over a span of 6 months, and that was just for training and experience and understanding. And I remember thinking, like, man, that's pretty interesting. I wonder why he did that or who he paid, because obviously all value is and advice isn't created equal. But so I clicked on the article, I started reading it, and then Tim's story starts with him coming over. His family was missionaries, so he's in the United States for college. He's about 18 years old, and he has his college professor come in. And this college professor is like, hey, I just lost about $50,000 today in the stock market. And he was not in as bad of a mood as you would think he would be in. And he told all of his students that they should go all in on the stock market and investing, even though he had just lost $50,000. And Tim said that he took that advice and he started investing in the stock market. And then slowly, over a span of about 10 years, he said he started with a few extra dollars from his job, and then he worked his way up to having $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. And he said somewhere around there, he realized this is really working. This money is actually growing. And so he started investing, and he continued, and he started putting more of his paycheck in. And then even when his job started getting a little bit stressful, he had the money where he ended up with about 1.3 million. And so that was part of the reason he was in the article. But he credits all of his success to that professor and the mentors that he was able to find along his way. And so that missing gap is the wisdom. You and I have experiences. We know certain things. Each of us knows something. But someone who has kids knows something that people that haven't had kids yet will learn. Someone who knows how to drive can teach someone who's never driven. There is experience and awareness that we each create. And so, who do we reach out to bridge certain gaps? And we'll talk about why that is very important. So, as I mentioned, the reason I read about him is he paid several people. So, he paid Instagram influencers to show him how to build a social media audience. He paid real estate moguls to show him how to buy real estate and to flip properties. He paid business owners to show him how to turn his side passion into a business for himself. And you and I can do that. Now, whether we go to conferences, whether we pay a professional, whether we go to network events and fireside chats, however we want to get access to these people, that's what we're going to want to do. And so it's definitely worth our time on that. And so, what kind of lifestyles does wisdom work for? The beauty is it works for all of them, right? All of them. Single family, bunch of family, everybody's working, nobody's working, volunteering. It works for everything. And that is a part of the reason why we're told to seek wisdom. And I would just stress it a little bit further where you may remember back in the day, there used to be these old commercials where they would say there's an app for that. And you would just kind of keep clicking through and they say there's an app for that. And no matter what you can find, there's an app for that. Well, that's how wisdom is. There is a app for that. There is a process for that. And we'll talk about some of the benefits of having a plan in place and why that will be so beneficial for you in accomplishing your goals. And so that is what we're going to go over today. So over this 5-day challenge, up and down, we'll be able to discuss three main important things. Number one, and what we'll talk about today, is the unlimited wealth, how to passively build wealth, even if you don't come from money, so you can accomplish your goals without sacrificing your happiness. And then tomorrow, we'll talk about how to effortlessly take control of your finances, design your perfect retirement plan, and track your success in less than 15 minutes. And then number three, we will round everything off with how to achieve financial freedom and create generational wealth regardless of income using the same exact strategies that self-made millionaires use to create theirs. And so out of those, we'll then discuss, where I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Not going to brag, just a little bit about myself. I'm someone who believes that the information you're given is only as valuable as the person giving it to you. And so I have been in the financial industry for close to 2 decades, right? So about 15 years. I know you can't tell looking at me, but I've been there for at least almost on 2 decades. And I've received lots of awards. I've met amazing people. So on the right is the president of the American College. I was able to meet him. On the left is Susan L. Taylor, the Essence magazine editor for a very long time, where I'm able to do lots of things in the community where I'm teaching, strategizing on how to create generational wealth. 100 black men on the left, and then the CEOs. A little bit of me is I was working, right? I went to college, got my degrees, got the job. I was working all the time. And it was working for me. I had the money, we were able to buy the house, had the kids, had a bunch of kids, had some more kids. I have 4 girls, so I'm a girl dad. And we were able to have a lot of fun. The only problem was I was working so much I didn't have as much time as I really thought I needed. And interesting enough, I wasn't having any excess income. That even though I was getting a raise every year, I got a promotion or something. It was like the money was always gone. If that's ever happened to you, if you know what I'm talking about, if you're able to put a yes in the chat, that's me. I would appreciate not knowing I'm the only one. But that was me, right? So that was my life. So I was able to realize slowly but surely life was about a lot more than riches, right? I had the money, but I was so tired all the time because when I wasn't working and I was trying to give my kids the time, the best quality time I could give them was just sleeping with them. I was like, I'm exhausted. Are you guys exhausted? Let's take a nap. And then we would just sleep together. And they would have different shows that they would put on for me. And I would still be kind of dozing off during the shows because I was just so tired. And then I was like, man, there's gotta be like a different way to do this because I do want to enjoy my time, spend with the kids, but at the same time, I'm really tired and I do want to afford a certain lifestyle for them. Interesting enough, my wife agreed to let me quit my corporate job running the pricing department of a $2 billion company, making pretty good money. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna, spend more time with the kids. So I'll homeschool them and we'll figure this out. I've been listening to like John Lee Dumas and Entrepreneur on Fire. I've listened to lots of people and they talk about taking the leap. And Steve Harvey said that you'll figure it out before you hit the ground and all this other stuff. So I was like, I'll just take the leap. And that didn't happen. Everybody told me that I would figure it out before I hit the ground, and I did not. I did not figure it out before I hit the ground. So I don't know if that's ever happened to any of you, but that was me. I did not figure it out before I hit the ground. It could just been me. But we ended up having to sell our first house, which like really sucked. I had to pick up shifts as a Lyft driver, which probably wasn't the most exciting thing either. But I was actually more happy because I was spending more time with my kids. Now, the difficulty was I couldn't pay any of my bills. I had built a certain lifestyle that required a certain amount of income, and I was unable to meet that threshold. And that was really tough. So I was like, all right, well, I emptied out my 401k. I was like, I figured out before this goes empty, and I did it. And I ended up having to go back to the drawing board where now I'm sitting there and I'm making less than I ever made. And I'm actually at home even less because if you've ever done small jobs like that when like in the gig economy, they make it sound great being like a Lyft driver or a shift driver or something like that, but you end up having to be out all day to make it work. So now I had less time with my family and I was making a lot less money and I had no safety net. Like I had nothing, where I felt like I was literally failing on every aspect of being a father, a husband, a successful person. And I would just listen to Jim Rohn all the time. And you'll hear me quote him in the Bible. I quote both of them pretty often. And it's not right, no order, right? You'll be like, well, Dre, no order. I'm just saying that those were things I was reading a lot. And then was like, all right. And then Jim had said, right, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. He said, don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills. He's like, don't wish for less challenge, wish for more wisdom. And when he had said that, and all the times I was listening to him, I remember thinking, yeah, like I remember reading about Solomon as a kid and talking about wisdom. I remember praying for wisdom. I remember it seeming like to me almost a genie, where if you could say you get one wish, you wish for wisdom. Wishing for wisdom is almost like wishing for unlimited wishes, because that's how I felt about wisdom. And when Jim had mentioned that to me, I was like, yeah, there must be something I'm missing, right? Like I had been groomed and I knew exactly how to get a job and be an employee. I didn't really know how to be an entrepreneur and a business person. And so then we talked about seeking wisdom. Now, I'm not going to spend much time here. It's just the idea that it's mostly our experiences. We can get wisdom through our own mistakes or someone else's mistakes. That is wisdom for the most part. Now, some people will say, well, what's the difference between wisdom and knowledge and understanding? And I will say, look, the Bible refers to them as separate things. So I do think there is a difference. What I would say is knowledge is knowing what to do, right? Understanding is knowing why you're doing it, and wisdom would be knowing how to do it, right? So I'll say that again. So for me, at least for me, in my simpleness, knowledge is knowing what to do. So I usually give the example of cutting a tree down, but I'll give you a different one today. I also plant lots of trees. So if I was to plant a mango tree, so my dad and my mom, they have like a ton of mango trees. They had hundreds of mangoes. And if they gave me a seed, I planted it. So I know that I need to give it sunlight, I need to give it water, and I need to give it what else? What else? Sunlight, water, probably some good soil, right? So sunlight, water, and some good soil. That would be the knowledge. These are the three things that I need. Then I would say, okay, well, what's the next thing? And I would need to know why I'm going to do this. Well, for me, I enjoy planting because for me, I feel close to my family because we're outside. I enjoy that a lot. I also do it because I like mangoes. So I'm going to eat the mangoes and I get to share this with people. So it's beneficial for everybody, right? Like I want to contribute. I enjoy it. It's relaxation, it's meditation. And then how to do it. Then that was the part where you got to do it a little differently. Mangoes don't grow everywhere, right? Wisdom is understanding the type of climate that you need to grow a mango tree. Even though you can give it sunlight and water and good soil, it's not going to grow everywhere. So you would need to know what is the process and what type of climate is best for a mango. That would be how to do it. That's the gap that a lot of us have. A lot of us have knowledge, which is I know to grow something, I need sunlight, soil, and water. But then you don't have the wisdom of knowing how much sunlight is enough. Is it a shade? Does it need like 2 hours of sunlight a day? Or is it a half sunlight? So it needs like 3 hours of sunlight a day? Or is it a full sunlight and needs 6 hours? What type of climate zone do you live in? They will, if you know your climate zone, you actually can know what type of fruit trees grow best in your climate. But a lot of people don't actually have that understanding. They just go buy plants, they put it in the ground, they give it water. Some live, some die. They give all of them the same amount of water. And then, but hey, it's broken clocks right twice a day. So sometimes that's the right amount of water, and sometimes it's too much, and sometimes it's too little. And so that is going to be the difference. So how do I get the wisdom? Well, I'm glad you asked me. I started reading a ton of books. These are actually screenshots from my like book collection. Some of them I just kind of looked up online, and then some of them I was able to find in like my Audible. And then these are just a bunch of books I started reading and putting processes together, right? I've told you wealth is more than wisdom. So I read books on wealth, I read books on success and happiness. And today we'll be able to talk about the foundation that you have to set for yourself and for your future generations to be able to unlock generational wealth. And so understanding that and growing in my wisdom, I was able to go from right broken and unfulfilled to happy and financially free, where I'm doing things that I love doing, that I don't work for the money. I work for enjoyment. I work for passion. This is stuff that I love to do. I am a teacher at heart. I would teach for free. Now I don't mind getting paid, but I love teaching. And so I started doing Spartan races. So that's what some of those pictures are. I started volunteering at schools and teaching them. Those are my parents taking trips with the family, just a really good time. And so by the end of this challenge by the end of this 5 days. My plan is to give you the exact blueprint that I have so that we can change your life forever, right? That's what generational wealth is that idea. All right. So based on that, we'll keep moving. We'll do today one. So what you'll hear me refer to, and I remember going back for my wife a lot, where it was like, all right, what is it called? I call we stuck on wisdom stacking, and the main reason is she said it was easier to say than the other options that I had. I think I had like wisdom cultivating, or I had like wisdomite. Like I had a bunch of different things, and she was like, I don't know, but she often poo poos my idea, but we stuck on wisdom stacking. And so this is the process of strategically gathering knowledge from multiple sources, taking action to grow your experience, and drawing accurate conclusions to decide what's right for you and your family. And that, Jim, there's lots of people who will say that we overestimate what we could do in 1 year and underestimate what we can do in 10. Financial planning is a lot like that, where people are like, I want to be debt free tomorrow. And you're like, well, if it took you 5 years to get in this amount of debt, then how are we going to get out in 5 days? Now, it's not impossible, but I do think we should have a very reasonable understanding of what it takes to create generational wealth. There's a reason that 80% of the, well, not 80, I think the number's actually down close to like 65, 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And that even includes half of the population of America that makes over. So if you take the population that makes six figures or more a year, half of them live paycheck to paycheck. And about 60% of people are retiring what we call broke, which just means they have less than $5,000 saved for retirement. So there is something missing. And so we're going to talk about getting that how we're going to use wisdom for you to be able to achieve your goals. All right. So Jim Rohn says that to solve a problem, there's three questions that you have to ask yourself, right? What could I do? What could I read? And who could I ask? And you're right, that is me playing with my kids. So ironically enough, so this is a picture of me hanging with, I believe it's Alex. I believe it's Alex because she gave me the hardest time, and I would totally take a picture of her like calming down. And I remember that my wife, she gave birth, she went to sleep, right? Obviously, she just gave birth, and so I had to do everything for the baby sitting in the hospital, and she would just be screaming at me all the time. She would just keep screaming at me, and I gave her food, and she would just like hit it away, and she'd scream. I'd change her diaper, and it would be dry, and then she'd still be screaming. I'd try to rock her, I'd try to burp her, and she just like, have you ever had a baby that just you just couldn't satisfy? And that's what that was. That was my kid that was like, look, nothing you're gonna do is gonna make me stop screaming at you, old man, unless you figure this out. And so in my most desperate of times, I ended up Googling like how to figure out, get your baby to stop crying. Like I Googled something like that. And then they came up with this video. So it was like a YouTube video, and it was Oprah interviewing this lady. I think it's the Dunstan. I think her last name is Dunstan. And she said she had an audiographic memory. So you and I, right, we may have a photographic memory, so we see and remember. She could hear and remember. And she said that babies make six distinct sounds, and each sound has a distinct meaning. And I was like, man, this is interesting. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to try it. And so what are those sounds? Is like nah is I'm hungry, like is right, I have to fart or something. Oh is I'm tired, ha means uncomfortable, and means to burp. And I just listened very carefully. And when I heard the sound, I would do that particular thing. And you know what happened? She actually stopped crying. And it was amazing. I remember thinking, like, wow, I went from I don't know what to do with this kid. I'm going to wake everybody up. I'm going to call the doctor in here. I'm going to call the nurse in here, to somehow I was able to bridge this gap and become this, as you saw, a very chill and the baby sleep and everything's good. And all it was is I tapped into the wisdom of someone else, someone who was credible, knew what they were talking about. And I tried it and it worked. And I was like, this is pretty amazing. Now, why am I telling you this? Why is this important? This is important, as I mentioned, because there is a problem right now with Americans and their finances, and really everybody in the world. So we can see 63% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. And you can see that people are generally unhappy, that the Times Happiness Survey has never been above 35%, right? So that means like 7 out of 10 people said, I'm not really happy. There's something missing in my life. There's something I would rather be doing than what I'm doing right now. And a lot of people believe that if I had more money, I could be more happy. And happiness does bring a level of comfort, but it doesn't guarantee happiness. That there is a cost, and you can find different people who will say, "Yeah, if I could do it over again, I wouldn't have done that." And you can find that with professional athletes where they're like early in their career, and they'll go anywhere to get a paycheck, and then after they get the money, they're like, you know what, I'm not going to play for any team. I'm not going to go to any location. I'm going to pick somewhere that's good for my family, that has a good community, or that I have a chance to win a championship. Right? There's other things more than the money, and you find that to be true with all of us. There's music entertainers where maybe they said, and they'll be like, my first album, it was required of me to make a certain kind of music that wasn't true to me, but it was a price I was willing to pay to get into the industry. Where I did certain movies that maybe I wasn't that interested in to get there. Where maybe you or I took a certain job and we weren't very excited about the job, but we figured if we got our foot in the door, we could move up. And then at some point, your standards increase, and then you don't accept that foolishness anymore, right? Like they'll come up to you and you're like, no, I'm not going to do that because we move up. And so everybody does that in all aspects of life. And so it's important for us to kind of keep that in mind, and we'll go into that a little bit more. So, as far as your happiness and what we'll go over today, and I found basically put together like a framework based on the wisdom of others, and I call it Be Glad. So, the G is the gain understanding. And what I mean by gaining understanding is the book Happiness by Design. It basically says, look, there's two things that make us all happy. It is our pleasure and our purpose. That there are things that we enjoy doing that are pleasurable, like for me, eating donuts. And then there are things that's like purposeful, that's like, I want to be healthy because I want to be there for my kids. I want to travel. I want to do all these other things. So I have to balance the two, and so do you. We then have the leverage relationship. So Harvard did a 70-year study, which is crazy, right? They follow people around, and they found that the most important, the highest probability of you being happy is having good relationships. So we like to interact with people, so we need to surround ourselves with people that we enjoy. I find for me, a core value for me is authenticity. I can deal with almost anything as long as you're your most authentic self. I can't deal with fakeness. I don't like beating around the bush. I feel like it wastes time. I just don't like wasting time. And I just want us to get to right after it. And then the A is appreciate each day. So again, another study where it just says, look, people who give thanks, people who are grateful and appreciative, they are happier. And you and I aren't surprised about that. There's nothing overwhelmingly shocking about that. And then designing your life. Studies say that if you plan and you have a plan in place for your life, that you just feel better. We just feel more comfortable when we know the direction we're going. I don't know about you, but I like having my GPS on, even if I know where I'm going, because it may say there's an accident and you should take this alternate route. And I just like that. I just like having a plan in place where I know that it's going to work out for me. And so there's really two parts. So the W in wisdom we're going to talk about is like your a winner's philosophy. And there's lots of examples of this. If you've ever seen where someone seems like they got lucky, I'm telling you, it's not exactly that. And so each of us have 24 hours in a day. There's 8 aspects that, generally speaking, will be the beginning of happiness. I can almost guarantee you that if you do one thing in each of these categories every day, then you're going to be monumentally happier. And you will realize that most people, when they say, well, I'll travel more when my money gets right, I'll see my parents when my money gets right, I will volunteer when my money gets right, that you can actually start some of these things today. And so I'll give you some of the examples, and then we'll wrap it up. Where if you want the homework, you have to go to the Facebook group. So the homework will be in there, and I'll be there to answer any additional questions for you. But we'll definitely be able to go over the strategies together in these lives, and then the tactics will be inside of the challenge. So I do invite you guys to go in there as well. That's obsidianwisdom.com/retirement challenge. And then you will sign up, and then you'll get a link to join the Facebook group. So identifying the pattern, why is this important? Because what the life we created is linked to the understanding that we have. The reason that people struggle with generational wealth is because you will go through a process to become someone who can create wealth. I've mentioned it to you earlier. So to create wealth, you just have to provide value to other people. The amount of wealth that you have is directly tied to the value that you give other people. So what does that mean by the time wealth is gone by your third generation? Well, the first generation, so right, you and me right now, we achieve it. We figure it out. We go through the struggles. We have to sell the house. We have to be a lifter. We do all that stuff. Our kids have seen a lot of the journey. And so they have a decent understanding of what it takes. So whatever we know, we teach our kids, and then they end up following that. And that you find that the Pentagon, that's what that one article is. The Pentagon did a study, and they found that 80% of their troops had a family member that was in the military. Right. So your military family, you see your parents in the military, see your grandparents, your uncles, you know someone in the military. You have an 80, there was 80% of them came from families that had already people in the military. You find that poverty is cyclical as well, where it's not first generation, it's like second and third generation. We teach our kids certain things, how we eat our food, the type of food that we eat. If we're healthy, if we eat a bunch of junk food, if we go to fast food a lot, we teach that to our kids, that you find that the healthiness of a parent trickles to the child. So we have to figure out generational wealth, and then we teach it to our kids. Well, the second generation gets that. We taught it to them. But what happens by the third generation? Unfortunately, we did not teach our children to teach their children the journey and the transformation that we went through. So as a result, they're born with the money. And the third generation ends up thinking the money is for me because, I earned it or I did something. And that's not true. The wealth is created by the value that we provide other people. So your third generation is not interested in providing value for other people. They only want to provide value to themselves. And so they pay other people out the money to provide value to them. And as I just told you, whoever provides value gets the money. So your kids provide, or your grandkids not providing value loses the money, and the people that they're providing value to gets the money. And that is why 80% of the time generational wealth is gone by the third generation. Now, granted, there are small pieces with like taxes and strategies and make sure they don't spend it on certain things. And we'll talk about that later on in the challenge. But the number one thing that I would submit to you, the reason that the third generation messes it up 70% of the time, I mean, it depends on the study, right? I'm throwing the number and you guys are probably like, what? I can show you a study where the number was 90%, and I can show you a study where it said it was 70%. So somewhere between 70 to 90% of the time, the generational wealth is gone by the third generation. So we have to identify the patterns and teach our children those patterns. What have we learned and how can we pass that on? And we'll be able to put that together. So I'll give you a couple of examples just so you can knock it out today, even if you don't come inside of the Facebook group, so that I can give you the tactics and show you. But if you find someone successful and wisdom stack them, right, I'm gonna give you lots of examples of just people that have parents and child. So from the left, that's Denzel Washington. That's his son. I actually went and watched the movie Tenet. He was fantastic. But there's no doubt that Denzel taught his son all of the ins and outs of Hollywood, and he was able to become a very young, successful actor. You got LeBron James. If you watch basketball, his son Bronny, he's already fast tracked to the NBA. His dad taught him all and shared all the wisdom that he had, the training, the eating, the regiments, the where to go in the schools, all of that he was exposed to. And as a result, he's able to get the same results that his dad got. You may not know the two there. That's Danielle Towns, and their dad Phil Towns wrote the book. Like I think it was like Rule Number One, is I think the book that he wrote. And she was a lawyer, but then she ended up getting burnt out, and then she learned about investing, and her dad teaches investing in the stock market. So she was able to learn from him, and now she does that. You have Eli and Peyton Manning, both NFL quarterbacks. Their dad, Archie Manning, NFL quarterback. And then you have Will Smith and he's in the entertainment industry, and all of his kids are in the entertainment industry. There is a correlation. Now, the good news is you don't have to go be their kids. You don't have to do that. But if you want to gain the wisdom of others, you could, simply buy their products. Look, if they wrote a book where they talked about it, then you should read their books. They'd give you their process. If they have courses, sure, take the course. If you can go to a mastermind or a retreat, or if you could just have a one-on-one relationship where they mentor you, all of these are great options. If you're able to get the information that they have, their experience, their wisdom, their understanding, you're able to then get their results. Now, it's not enough just to have the knowledge. Some of them give you the knowledge, but you have to be able to gain the wisdom. They need to give you more than just, water the plant, give it good soil and sunlight. You need to know the intricacies of what it takes to get the results that they have, if that's what you're trying to get. And then you will be able to outline, right, the overall happiness for yourself. Now, there's lots of examples, because a lot of people believe, well, Dre, you have to sacrifice everything to get the wealth. And I'm like, well, no, you don't. You should stick to your core values. I believe the Bible says, what's the benefit of gaining the whole world if it costs you your soul? And I often think that, like, what is something worth if you sacrifice a part of your essence, like your core values, right? Like what is that really worth? Because for most people, and I have clients like that, where what they'll do is they'll be like, look, Dre, I'm burning both ends of the candlestick. I'm getting it. I got the money. And then the first thing they want to do is to build back the relationships that they sacrificed. But their kids maybe are grown, or maybe they resent them, or they resent the business, where they're like, I did all this for the kid, but the kid maybe isn't as excited. They would sell the business if they could. And the people would be like, well, I sacrificed my health where I ate unhealthy food for a long time so that I can make this work. I couldn't waste time eating healthy. And then when they get the money, they want to buy their health back, but you may not be able to buy your health back either. So you don't want to give something that you would spend your money to buy back. That's generally my rule. If you are willing to buy it back, then don't sell it in the first place. We don't want to pawn our core values. So Richard Williams is one of those examples. So he was told, look, if you want your girls to be tennis stars, then they have to go A, B, C, D. And he said, you know what? I don't want my girls to be burned out. I want them to have a childhood. I want them to enjoy life. I need to find an approach that works where they don't have to sacrifice their childhood and possibly get burned out. And he did. He took them out of the junior circuits, and they were able to make it work. If you don't know, it's a fascinating story. Richard Williams, I think he said he was watching a Romanian player, and she got a 1978, and she won $20,000. And if you're wondering, that's about $93,000 today, right? So she won about $100,000 for one event. And he was like, well, dang, I should have my kids do that. And he made this 80-page plan for his daughters before they were even born, which is like crazy. But he worked, and he was like, you know what? I'm not going to sacrifice my family for this. And so he did it. Roland Reed. So this one I have in here because there are people who will say, well, Dre, you can't make money unless you have money, right? Like I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a big job. I'm not making enough to be able to achieve generational wealth. And that's not true either. So Ronald Reed, he's a CNBC story as well. And it's actually pretty interesting where he died. Nobody knew it, but he was a millionaire. He had like $8 million in his investments when he died. And he had a $30,000 a year job. He came back from one of the wars, and he just worked as like a cleaner, and then he went to the local like community center and played bingo, right? Just a very chilled guy. But he put in what they estimate, nobody knows because he didn't tell anybody, but they estimate he put in about $300 a month, and he invested that. And so he just bought blue chip stocks that pay dividends. So blue chips, in case you're wondering, is like large caps. They're going to be the top of the top. So the largest companies we have, they're generally not going anywhere. And he was able to turn $30,000 a year into $10 million at retirement. Right? He worked very well for him. You don't have to have a lot of money, but for him, he wanted to live a simple life. So he left. He left the money. I think he left like half of it for the kids that actually visited him and talked to him. That obviously nobody knew he had the money, and he left about half of it for the community center. There was like someone who always talked to him at the community center. He gave it to the community center and for that one person. And so for him, he wasn't a flashy person. He was a very simple person, lived a simple life, but he didn't have to worry about money. And so he didn't sacrifice himself either. Chadwick Boseman is one of my cool examples that I love the way Chadwick an example. I mean, it's unfortunate that he had passed, but Chadwick, he was told to be a success in Hollywood, you have to take all roles. And he said, I'm not taking any stereotypically negative portrayals of black roles. And he talked about this, I forget the name of it, but there was a soap opera where he took the job and then they told him his mom was a crack addict and his dad was in prison. And he went in there and he told the writers, he was like, I'm not going to do this role. And they fired him. And you would think that that's obviously very hard for you to be able to make your way in Hollywood if you refuse to do some of those roles. I don't know if you know, but about 75%, I haven't read it in probably like a year, but the last time I read it, about 75% of roles that portray blacks is usually going to be in, some sort of a negative light where they're going to be in some sort of a gang or single parent household in prison, something like that. And then you'll go through that. So he was a very limited roles, but he was able to, he did like Jackie Robinson, he did Black Panther, he did all positive roles, and he was able to make it work. And it took him a little bit, but he didn't sacrifice who he was. He did not give something that he couldn't buy back. There are people, I think I think I read where they'll be like, yeah, I really wish I didn't do that role. It wasn't a good look. It wasn't a positive influence. It's something that I'm almost embarrassed that my kids know that I did that, right? Stuff like that. But he didn't do that. And then little old me. So you may not, I hadn't told you, but after I hit rock bottom, did the lift driving, trying to figure everything out, I ended up going back to basically the roots of things. And so I'm a teacher at heart. And so I started teaching. I started teaching economics. I started teaching math. I started teaching science at the schools, and it was great. I felt so alive. I was able to focus on my contributions, and then I was still able to have the business. So you may not know, but when you're in finance, if you have certain businesses outside of finance, they don't allow you a lot of freedom to run that business. We have huge outside business activity restrictions, and those were costs that I weren't willing to pay. So I could have gone back and gotten a job making $150,000 a year, but then I wouldn't have been able to have my RIA and my financial planning firm. Right? That would have been the cost, and I wasn't willing to pay that. And so I was able to find the necessary balance for me too. All right, so you may be wondering, well, Dre, all right, well, who does wisdom work for? I thought I already told you everybody, but it's okay. We can go through it. It literally works for everybody. There's not someone that you cannot use this exact process to figure out exactly what drives you and that you can enjoy. And you want to pass this on to your children as well. And it's very important. And your total investment would be, I mean, if you bought like a couple books or something, I mean, we're really talking about $100. I take my kids to the library every weekend. So you could do it even for free, but if you said, Dre, reading it takes a lot of time. I don't know if I have enough time for that. And I don't know exactly who I should find to mentor me. And that's cool. I can give you one example of that. And I don't have any affiliate commission or anything. Like I don't get paid for it. But the masterclass website, those are all people very successful in a wide range of skill sets. And they offer a lot of their insights. Now, I haven't taken it, so I don't know if they're giving you the wisdom or just the knowledge. But if they are giving you the wisdom, it's a great resource that's available. The people that I know that have gone through it, they all rave about it. They say it's phenomenal. It's very detailed. They give you a lot of information about them. Or you could just kind of build your own team, and we'll talk about that more on day 5 as well. All right, so that leaves you with two choices. Then we'll be done here. So you have two choices, right? Choice number one is we can keep doing things the hard way. What does that look like? Oh, that's waiting for a future to live life, where we're like, all right, when I, retire at like, in 20, 50 years, then I'll do all these things. And I would not recommend that. I don't think that works very well. We can spend too much time and effort buying stuff. I find that the large reason people spend money on buying things is because they're trying to fill a hole and they're not sure exactly the best way to fill it. We watch commercials that make it seem like if I bought this car, then my life would be so much better than it is, that I will feel better. If I was able to take all this stuff, that it would fix everything. But the reality is that isn't it. And you may be thinking, yeah, I know people like that. I know people that spend money every month, every weekend, going and drinking away their sorrows because they can't figure out what makes them tick, what they enjoy the most out of life. You could stay at home and eat ramen noodles. So there are people who will say, all right, I'm going to save 50% of my income and I'm going to live a miserable life for 5 or 10 years. And then I'm going to have all this money and then I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm like, all right, that's cool. It did cost you 5 or 10 years. I have a process where I would recommend enjoying each and every day, because you should not take today for granted. Right. Tomorrow is definitely not promised. So you definitely shouldn't take today for granted. Like, well, it'll all work out in the long run. It may or may not. You'll find when you get to know me that I'm big on wisdom and I'm big on love. The Bible talks about love, and it says that it covers a multitude of sins, that it's like the bond that lasts forever. And I'm someone who believes that if you love what you're doing, it's much easier to stick to the plan. Right. Like if I put a plan together, like a fad diet where you can only eat 500 calories a day. Well, how long are you going to be able to maintain that diet? Sure, you're going to get great results, but how long do you think you can maintain eating 500 calories a day? I would rather put something together where you enjoy your meals, you enjoy eating every day, but it still gets you the results that you want. That more times than not, if we make a lifestyle change, if we change who you are, then it's going to change what you got. And so most of the time you'll see that this whole challenge is going to be an example of that. Everything we talk about is going to be focused on how do I help you become the person who wants to do the things to get the results that you want. It's not, you all already know. I mean, you don't really need me to give you a plan, but you do need someone to help you make that change in your mind where you can stick to the plan. Man, that's really what the goal is. This whole week, we're going to transform the way you think about money, your relationship with money, so you can get the results that you want. Right? Arnold Schwarzenegger has a completely different relationship with food than I do. right? He would say, I eat for protein and, nutrients. I would say I eat for something that makes me smile and something I enjoy. Completely different relationship. People have a different relationship with money, different relationships with everything. Trying to keep up with the Joneses. You don't want to fall into the compare trap. It doesn't really matter what someone else is doing. You don't know. They could be um, putting everything on a credit card, like, and you're just like, oh, they seem like they're doing so much better. Their life is so much better. You don't really know, right? I've already shown you the numbers. The majority of people are living paycheck to paycheck, right? So if someone is out there acting as if they're in a different situation, right? They just maybe, I don't know the technical term, but when you go on like Instagram or and different social media where they make it sound like everything's wonderful. It's kind of like that, but we all know it's not. Stuck in the right race, not improving. The system is designed to make employees for 50 years. That's how the system is designed. So the only way you're going to get a different result is by doing something different. So you can stay in the rat race, and they've gotten really good at engineering and structuring things to make it difficult for us to get out, or we can make that change, or just sweeping problems under the rug. Right? There's lots of people I meet with that has that one drawer in their kitchen, and that one drawer has all of their finances, all of the documents, everything that they're supposed to pay and different things, and they just stick it in the drawer. You don't want to have to do that either. And the good news is all of those things, if we're able to fix those, or we're able to figure these things out, right? You have a choice of it being priceless, the joy and the satisfaction that we can live, or we can spend like 50 plus years, right? Like, so those are our choices. And so tomorrow I will show you, and probably a little bit, probably maybe a little bit more, but around 10 minutes, I will show you exactly how to put the plan together. We have the financial plan, you have the results that you're looking for, and then we are going to start wisdom stacking. So generally that's going to be your homework for today. If you are interested in getting a different result, then you have to understand and gather the wisdom, the awareness of what someone else is doing, and then you have to find a way to incorporate that in your life, where you make yourself exactly like them. So for example, I thought I loved watching Kobe Bryant. He was such an assassin, the way he went about the game. But with $4 and the way that I am, I know that assassin mindset wouldn't have been as conducive for me as a basketball player. Right? I'm somewhere a little bit lower than Kobe, but obviously a lot, somewhere higher than maybe like Dwight Howard, and how him and Kobe did mesh. Like Kobe and I would get along, but that's what I'm talking about. Where you can't just say, "Well, I want their money, I want their success, I want their results," but then you look at their wheel, and their wheel is not aligned with the way you would live your life. Then you have to blend different aspects of other people's plans together to make your own, so that you actually can have the mindset that will allow you to stick to the plan that we make tomorrow. Because having a plan isn't really what it's about, right? That in investing, people tell you, right, hey, you gotta buy low and sell high. But at the same time, we know the majority of people jump on meme stocks, so they're buying high, and then they freak out when it crashes, so they ended up selling low. Right? That's how the majority of people invest. And so it's not as much about that as much as about who we have to be, the discipline and the mindset that we have. And that is it. So again, if you have additional questions, and as you work through today, all you have to do is go to the Facebook group. I'm going to be in there. I'll be in there for probably about like 30-45 minutes. I can answer any questions that you have. This is the very first of the challenges, so I look forward to having this at least once a month, where maybe that second, I'm thinking that the first full week of each month, I think we can probably do this together. But I look forward to doing this with you, and I do appreciate your time. If you want to join, again, all you got to do is go to obsidianwisdom.com/retirement challenge, and you can sign up, and then they'll send you a link to join the Facebook group, and I'll let you in. Until next time, continue blessings.